Hey, what's up? I just wanted to tap in with a quick video. This one, I had a couple of different ideas, and I forgot what the hell they were, but I had a couple ideas that were clear in my mind, and I wanted to offer it with this. And one is the one that I can remember is I was thinking, like sometimes life had the right idea back in the day, and we forgot about it. So sometimes people that people people like they'll drop a name that you grew up, that name was very common when you grew up, but now sometimes you don't realize you're growing up, but a lot of people don't know what you're talking about. So anyone from my day, like back in the 80s, you would know about the Ninja Turtles. A lot of people now know about the Ninja Turtles, but especially back in my days, like if you're I'm a baby of the 80s but a child of the 90s, but any baby and or child of the 80s and or 90s would not likely know Ninja Turtles, but not necessarily some of the references in the older Ninja Turtle movies, because I watched that movie as a young boy, like in the 80s, and there'd be some stuff in there that was like, some of the stuff was like, it was like household names, but I was too young to know like what it was about. So back in the 80s, like when they did the Ninja Turtles, some of those Ninja Turtles themes, they were loosely built on, I think it's actually like a street gang motif. Like a lot of the Ninja Turtles, like if you really break down what the Ninja Turtles were, a group of teenagers with weapons, and they got, their style pops like that, but it's a group of teenagers with weapons mobbing around. And the reason you can't call them out is like, oh yeah, that's a gang reference, is because they switched up their colors. So they got all the different cool colors. My favorite, I like Michelangelo and Donatello. Those were some of the more neutral colors, but there's no neutral color in life, because you gotta, whoever you are, you rock who you are, and some people may like it, some may not. Even if you're about peace, there may be some people that don't get on board with that. But they loosely couched some of the actual gang references. But back in the 80s, I think that you didn't have as much like you had. I'm not gonna be as much of an idiot to say that you didn't have violence and you didn't have weapons violence. But if you think about the 80s and 90s, right? If you were to walk into like a grocery store if you were to walk into a movie rental store from the 80s or 90s, or you just appreciate movies from the 80s and 90s, it was about gun this, gun that, maybe a romance. I mean, like a rom-com here and there, or like an animated classic. But some of those gave us the wrong ideas about things too. Then gun this, gun that. That was the 80s and 90s. But you have to think about, like, where did all that go? All that influence, like growing up, shoot 'em up, bang bang. Now there is a great song from the 70s, like shoot 'em up, gotcha at the. It's like a romance song about the westerns. Like I can never think of songs like when I'm making a video, like the lyrics. That might be like my greater conscious not allowing me to plagiarize anyone. But it's like at the shoot bang bang gotcha, shoot 'em up movies, yeah. That's a dope song like that. And that makes you think about anything but shoot 'em up stuff. Or like when you're really in love, you're at the highest seat in the world, because like love is strange because you look down on people, yet it's very humbling to be in love. So it's like when you're like two lovers, like all I meant to say is like guns are above everybody. Gun violence is always a threat to everyone. But when you're really, really in love, like bang bang gotcha, shoot 'em up movies, yeah, that song, that's the only time in life where you have the advantage point to actually look down at all this gunplay and violence as silly. But back in the day, it was always about gun this and gun that. But those influences, they had to go somewhere. So you had the influence of so many movies, so many themes, so much media, so much violence. It had to affect the culture. But then you also, I don't know how you would contrast how guns were available back then, or maybe you couldn't just put guns into a children's show. But the Ninja Turtles, they were largely based around like street gangs. I think that would be like and like what's like some little kids getting into, like, what's the difference between like hooligans and actual like real criminal activity? That's a fine line there. But when you play with those fine lines, you can get it can go like violence is the kind of thing where it can go from zero, it can go from sticks to nuclear bombs just like that. That's what violence is. So all I meant to say is that you always had like street gang stuff, but the Ninja Turtles was an example of that. But they focused more so like on weapons, like implements. Like I think like one of them had a sai, one of them had a big stick, one had nunchucks, and one had swords. That's wicked stuff. At close quarters, some of that stuff's more wicked than actually firearms. But all I meant to say is that they would reference in there someone named Jose Canseco Bat. Jose Canseco Bat. Jose Canseco Bat. Does anyone know what the hell I'm talking about? Jose Canseco Bat. I think he was like a rock star baseball player from back in the day. I actually don't remember him playing, but I remember the references to him in those films. But what I want to say is that when you're doing something really cool in life, you have to a lot of times like you just a second, I just gotta get squared away. I'll be right back. That's fine. Now, I probably extra tacky right there, but if someone gives you grace, you gotta roll with it. So what I was saying is that, so they'd reference that Jose Canseco like that, but that's actually a little bit there can be something to learn from that because he was all about home runs. I think he was like the first Sammy Sosa, the first Mark McGwire was Jose Canseco like that, and they referenced him in that movie because how that would play into that theme. But what I was thinking is like if you whatever you have that you're into, like I had a teacher in school that said trust the work. So whatever you're into, you have to do it for the so what I'm saying is you have to do it for the sake of it if you're into something. So you do the best you can. You likely don't get you don't get back what you put into it, at least not directly, but you have to keep on doing it and try and fail, try and win, still fail, try and just like that, get all the way to first place and then have like the trophy confiscated from you in front of the audience, stuff like that. But if you stick at it long enough, like kind of like chopping at a tree, the wins and losses don't really matter. It's just the swings that matter. And at a certain point, it'll actually start to land, and then you get the sweet spot and the tree come down like that. So what I meant to say is like that's like that's why I'm referencing Jose Canseco like that, is that just do it for the Jose Canseco of it. But then the other thing that I wanted to reference with this video, this is a little bit different topic. I normally get two ideas that have nothing to do with each other, but it's more creative like that. And what I was thinking is, so you would think about like a lot of people, they say you have to be a lifelong learner, but also you would seem full of it if you thought that you knew all that there is to know, or you thought you could know all there is to know. So what is this thing about being a lifelong learner? According to Arthur Avalon, what makes this existence enduring is that it wastes not. It's efficient, that is, always improving, excellent. So we, along the lines of our interests and our responsibilities, we continue to learn and get better, almost like Jose Canseco, for the sake of it. And then on the average, on the whole, we make life more viable and disciplined and enduring like that. But it's not from the standpoint of knowing all that there is. but just for discipline, for the sake of discipline, like that's probably what makes life viable and healthy. But the thing that I wanted to do with this video is that when you attire yourself, like you walk out you walk out into life wearing something, it's more solemn and profound than you think, because life really engages you by the way that you would attire yourself, and that you would think of yourself to attire yourself one way. So that can mean anything from the greatest opportunity to the most tragic of outcome or circumstance, from how you would attire yourself. But just that it's not child's play how you would dress yourself. And there was this leader from India, and there's in India they have different understanding of the life process. Like they had like a structure, so you would go from a student, you'd go from a child to a student to a householder, like responsibilities of holding down a house, and then you would actually go to a point where you live a life of alms and begging. And it's a finer discipline that really it teaches you humility, mercy. The highest lesson you actually, begging may be the deepest learning that you can do. And hang on, I just gotta jump off the bus real quick. Hey, I'm getting off, sir. Sorry about that. I just got one more thing to grab. Thank you, friend. Thank you. So what I'm saying is, according to in India, they would have a drawn out life. They spelled out what the life process was for a person, and the higher tier is called sannyas. You're a sannyasin when you take sannyas, and that's a solemn path of it's a humble, lonely path of just walking you in life like that, and you're not with the comforts of your life, like your job, your home, your vehicle. They make you more comfortable, but they also make you a little bit weaker, because you get accustomed to them, but also you owe duty and responsibility to what you to what you're attached to, because they're attachments. The people in our life, the opportunities in our life, and some of the means, like the physical means, like conveyances and stuff like that, dwellings. It amounts to an attachment that it can fetter you from your highest understanding and your greatest experiences. But so in India, when you would take sannyas, you would wear orange, predominantly orange, and that symbolizes that lets people know what you. It's like it holds you. It's a mercy and a blessing, in that people, you may have certain accommodations and favor based on the fact that you would show that to the world, that you're going for that. But it's also solemn too, because there's no, when you're speaking in that term, there's no reneging something like that. Reneging means like when you claim a victory, or you claim the potential for a victory, and then you forfeit before you actually were defeated. That's called that's reneging, and it's kind of like going back on your word. So that's very embarrassing, and spiritually you don't want certain things don't mix well, and embarrassment doesn't mix well with things like spirituality, because spirituality is the highest stakes, the highest effort, the highest sacrifice, the highest endowment, the highest outcome, the highest blessing. So there's nothing to mince about that. But life has recently put me into a situation where sometimes life will choose a circumstance for you, and I think that mine is going along the line of sannyas, in that I've been stripped of a lot of things because of dynamics in my household. I've been stripped of a lot of my means before I got a chance to really make. I'm coming back. Yeah. Oh, okay. But before I got a chance to really make a lot of mistakes, I got stripped from my means. Some of it was a large confluence of circumstances, but some were within my control, but many were not. But it's a deeper emotion when life really holds you to the metal. I may have made public statements, even this channel, lifestyle choices that would put me in that direction. And at a certain point, your habits and your decisions, they come to a head. And you can be in any lifestyle, within the law, without the law, without the law, while within the law, with the law, while without the law, this and that, anything. But at a certain point, it will come to a head. What you're doing, it's almost like you could say justice, like the balance of justice. And I was speaking to my mother yesterday, is that I think that if you really juxtapose good and evil, it's almost like those two sides of the scale are almost like good and evil, and they almost like exactly nullify each other, because this many bad things happened to you, you therefore did this other bad thing, but that bad thing had happened first. There was some good that came out of the bad you did, there's some bad that came out of the good you did, so it all basically nullifies. The only difference within the good and bad is your testimony, and what were your real, good, bad this, justice this, righteousness this. But when you had it in your hand to do something for someone, like that mercy, did you show mercy? And it doesn't have to be like on the level of a martyr or saint, but you had an opportunity to show mercy to someone that needed something to do. You could almost get put on hard times for something great you did. I think that might actually be the thing, because a lot of your, like according to Osho, a lot of your blessings, they can turn into your torment, and your torment can also turn into your blessings. So you could extrapolate that hard times could actually be some form of a blessing, especially if you have your health and you're still receiving mercies within that. So nothing's all the way good or bad, even good and bad. But what the difference is that one is that the more honest you are, the more of a testimony you'll have, because the more you'll come through. If you stop being honest, you stop coming through. But also, if you're honest, then you have you're more fluent with speaking in those terms, and the experiences and thoughts that would come like that. So being honest, it forges your testimony. But you could really say that, you get up to St. Peter, and like St. Peter's like, and what are we to do with this one? And you're like, man, at a certain point, you don't even care about getting judged anymore, because you had to do what you had to do. And you had to watch other people do what they get to do while you had to do what you had to do. So it's like, who's really the judge in this life? Because if you're the judge, then who made this life jacked up? And what do you got to say about that? And what did you have to do with that before it got around to me? Stuff like that. But I don't mean to be flipping with that, because we all got to pay, and we really got to pay when we've got to pay. But especially when we don't got no one to help us pay. I haven't got to that point where I don't have no help yet, but I'm getting there. But all I meant to say is that what the difference between anything might be is just actually the testimony. Is like, what were those moments that actually spelled what kind of testimony you had and that you gave others to have. And did you, because like for me, I had someone damn near actually lift a motorcycle up off of me when I had tipped one over myself in the desert like that. What does that mean for that man that did that? What does that mean for me that he did that? What testimony is that not? And that's just a small sample of mercies that I've been having, a lot of them. I've been having a lot of what could seem like misfortune, but I think it's more challenge is what it would be than anything. But all I meant to say is so the only difference between good and bad, it might be just the testimony and how our decisions spelled our testimony and other people's testimony. But I was looking at, I started this video out talking about violence a little bit, and I wanted to talk about, this is not for the sake of clout chasing, but it's for the sake of clout chasing. For an example, it like this is a video of solidarity. There's a lot of there's certain buzzwords, and these buzzwords they're part of social programming and actually keeping the structure of the society intact. If you think about times of slavery, right, which we're still in, you could extrapolate we're still in. Think about the time that you really were head over heels for someone in your life, right? Like think about a woman or even a girl when you were growing up. You can be in the middle of hell, right? You can be on the plantation, but you get a crush on someone, and that crush is sorry, the energy came down a little bit because I got like a random marketing call, and just looking at that damn thing on the screen, it'll take the energy out of what I got to say. But if you speak truth, it'll disarm whatever mal influence came about. But and that's another conversation. Most people that would engage you for anything financial, whether you put your name on something or not, they're simply extorting you because there's nothing real in this finance. It's just simply extortion is all it is. And it doesn't make a difference one the other what you got to pay, but that you got to pay is what matters. And I think that part of knocking people down with these different financial warfare that we experience as civilians, it keeps the power of the dollar stronger, and it makes value more valuable, keeping everyone knocked down like that. But when when somebody says you owe this and that, that's just simply extortion, because it has ceased to be money. So it's extortion tactics. But if you imagine on the planet, if you imagine back in the day, what would really break someone, right? So as human beings, we have instincts about value. So like, to speak of value, like if I'm working hard, something good's gonna come from it. If I'm working really hard, doing my best, things are gonna come good for me. I might not be the strongest, I might not be the best, but I'm doing my best. Something good will come from that. But I would imagine back in the time of slavery, right? In the time of slavery, you didn't necessarily have to do something wrong to get punished. The punishment was to put the punishment was to it was to show the power, the lines of power. You could almost say, I would imagine that in times of slavery, the overseers, they weren't really actually putting down the pressure on one another. Because real pressure, it actually doesn't come from the top down. Because here go this entitled person say this and that. Yeah, we know, yes, a bossa, man, that punk dude. That's how people are probably talking. But you got something that has to get done, right? Like you have this certain amount of work that has to get done, or we don't get to come back from the field until this work is done. So you're going to be getting slammed by the people next to you because, this is messed up, this and that. We already know what Bossa Massive is about, but we actually got to get home. We still are eating here, so we still got to get something to eat. So you're going to have to hustle a little bit. You're going to have to do this and that. So it's just like in a prison, your real corrections and also oversight would come probably from parallel more so than top down. But the top down stuff, that's just to keep the structure, that's just to keep the overall structure intact. So if you can imagine, all I meant to say, I got a little bit on a tangent with this, but if you can imagine, like, the most brutal thing would be if you're working hard and you're working hard and you're punished for doing well. That's true trauma, because it's confusing the natural instincts. Is that I work hard, good things come. I am loving, love comes back. But that probably couldn't be further from the truth in a system of coercion and slavery. And you really don't know how deep the slavery training goes. Way deeper than the movie The Matrix would ever the film The Matrix didn't tell half the story of the real programming. And it doesn't take big old sophisticated computers, because humans make computers. Just good old human beings being human beings can traumatize people. But all I meant to say is that you don't appreciate how brutal that the rough. I think that the most brutal part of slavery, it wasn't the whips in itself, it wasn't the poverty in itself, it wasn't the labor in itself. It was the compromising of relationships, families. That's the most brutal part of it. So you don't appreciate how traumatic that'd be. Boss man going with somebody's lady, or just somebody's lady, just some lady that everybody likes, going with boss man, because power is power, and people are attracted to power. I think all people, men and women, there's something devilish and seductive about power, and that's probably always been with us. So just to be working this hard, doing this much, and then there go this entitled one, they get away with the bad mama, or just the pretty nice girl the only thing that we get to, the only thing of heaven, the only thing of life we get to experience in this hell is this beautiful woman that we're working with, or that's in our life. And then there she go with Bossa, because he either threw his weight around or was just actually attractive for having that much power. But I meant to say is that's some of where the word pimp comes from. I think is that some of like us people of African descent, we will adapt to any climate, any terrain, and actually make the most of what means are available, even the things that we learn from a heinous structure. So all I meant to say is that I'm not trying to say that black people are part of pimping or what pimping is. I'm saying that the entire Western society, based on feudalism, neo-feudalism, imperialism, feudalism, imperialism, nepotism, gentrification over this many iterations, amounting to slavery, Jim Crow, colonialism, industrialism, capitalism, digitalism, all that. It's exactly pimping. It's just pimping, nothing but pimping. That's all it is. So here goes some. But when you hear that word pimp, you would think of like a street person, a savvy person. But it sounds egregious because you're making a person sell their body. But what is a job not doing but making a person sell their body? So you got this. You just seen a job advertisement, right? It's for like cleaning sewers. You can't find a decent job anywhere. But here go this job that pays $15,000 more than the going rate, and they got benefits, this and that. That looks a little bit. That looks a little bit too good to be true. And I think that in life, like, you hear that word too good to be true, and a lot of things are too good to be true. It's not that they can't be true, but it's kind of like if you had like a sandcastle or something like that, it's just that perfect. Somebody would just, despite themselves, they would have to knock it over or do something to it, because it's just like it's good and it's true, but damn it, I'm gonna mess it up. So it's too good to be true. So it's too good for people to let it rock like that. So like if you look at like a lot of like, I've had different struggles using my actual skill set and my licenses because of the game, the racketing of like pharmaceutical drugs. Once you have a prescription, a diagnosis. I won a diagnosis as a very young man before I was even 20. And so that has not, that will not, that shall not leave my designated status in this current iteration of society. Try as I may, do as I may, succeed as I may, fail as I may, learn as I may, come back better, succeed. It does not matter. That's simply your designation in the caste system. But a lot of times there's work to be done. They're looking for help and stuff, and people can actually do it. So there's a lot of doing that doesn't get done because things just are too good to be true. Like, yeah, this is the perfect role for you. This would really change things for you, and you would change things for other people. But nah, man, not this time. So it's too good to be true like that. But then there go this work opportunity, too good to be true like that. But you don't know that that's going to exactly compromise your health. They're going to have you working in sewers, whatnot, breathing in fumes, whatnot. You have like this many 10, 20, 30, 40 years of health left to you, if not 50, and you can compromise that in less than a year or two if you have the wrong job for it. So these jobs, I'm standing outside of a fire station right now. I didn't plan that, but I've seen different things about how some of these firefighters, like around 9/11, they're having all these cancer outcomes because the toxicity of the different smoke they were around. And it could probably be understood to their superiors what the risk was. It's probably explained to them what the risk is. Yeah, this is a risk, man, but you guys are different than the other ones. Everyone's asleep right now, and you guys are out fighting fires. So just so you guys know, they probably gave them some kind of like validation to do something that wasn't in their best interest. But all I meant to say is that there are so many lines of work that exactly take advantage of a person's body as bad or worse than what would be called pimping. But pimping is horrible too, because if you imagine, I used to be a personal care attendant, and we had to do these yearly trainings about what happens to you with some of these different diseases, like contractable diseases. And if you really had an appreciation of what the experience of some of these sexual transmitted diseases are once they're imminent and they're active upon a person's life, it's horrible. my dad did research about it in Africa, and he I've almost never seen my dad like awestruck or like terrified. But when he would talk about some of the realities of these sexually transmitted diseases, it's humbling to a person to know what a person can go through. So from that standpoint, pimping is horrible. But also, like, it's not necessarily worse than like military conscription, because military conscription, you're exactly using people's bodies. You're exploiting and taking advantage of people's bodies for a military objective, which a lot of military objectives, if you look past the time and circumstance and the broader picture, like you look back at wars of old, the only thing of value you can really appreciate of wars of old is that these people would have been brothers, and they would have been in difficult circumstances helping each other survive. But beyond that, the wars come and go, the nationalism comes and goes, the pretext, the excuses come and go, but the carnage is the same like that, and it's a lot wasteful of life. But it can be exactly like that, that's actually pimping, is that you send someone off like that. But that word pimp, it more so reflects the Black American experience. I think that people would have overtones of like savvy men of color. But what I meant to say is that some of that mode of operating, it might actually just be an adaptation to the society that is by and large nothing but pimping. So I'm not standing for that, but I mean I was supporting that. But all I'm saying is that but these are how buzzwords function and how they engineer society. And you would see that on the surface. You get distracted up there, but you don't see right there that you're looking where the exact same thing happened, just a different way. They might call it a job or service or something like that, but it's still actually pimping. So this entire structure is a pimping venue. That is, according to Tashreeq Bey, he would say it's a human trafficking venue. The United States was based upon forced labor and also abduction of people, a wholesale organized abduction, and the actual dynamics of that and the cycles of that and the value of that, it never stopped to this day. So we're actually in a human trafficking venue in the Western society that is a pimping venue. But I a little bit digressed why I got on I got on about that pimping like that, is that I was gonna say, dang, I a little bit lost that train of thought. But so I was saying that made me think of a lot of like some things that really are pimping, like some of your sports. A lot of sports are actually really pimping because they're drawing the life force. Like I had a roommate in college who was actually on the football team. It was a Division I football team, and it was like a smaller state school, but it was still Division I, and that football was hella serious. That was like that was more than a job, because he would have been working harder in a day than most people with any job, just in terms of physical output. But also they were making them study film. He actually the next year, but the thing about him is he also had a little bit of a struggle with video games. So he spent an inordinate amount of time playing video games, like mesmerized by them, and it was distracting for me as his roommate, because by that time I had long left video games behind, and I saw it as a detriment. But between the video games and that might have actually been the way that he took the stress off. Now that I think about it with perspective, he was probably taking the stress off of how hard they were working them, and also not compensating them, because they expected them to take the football more serious than the schoolwork. But then knowing that a lot of them weren't actually going to go to the NFL. So I don't know what reason they would give them to actually invest in that, like that amount of output. But you can imagine that some of it would be idealistic, or like rah team spirit. We're all happy to be here in college around the beautiful people in college, but what are we actually doing in college if we're not getting an opportunity to study? You know, so I'm not saying you can't study with the football, but certain jobs, they're so difficult that you can't do anything outside of that. It doesn't, like after that point, shortly thereafter, I got into financial difficulty, and I had to work really, really hard to get out of that. But when I worked hard like that, when I came home, all I did was wake up, go to work, but also make sure I was well rested and be very attentive, because I took traffic really serious back then. I didn't play around like with cars and traffic. I'd be working for many hours, but I had certain ways of doing things. Like, for example, at the end of the night, when I had to like get stuff out of the car, I'd have to do like certain tasks with my car, evaluating it, and just when I would be at the shop there, if I would go out into my car, I would put my seatbelt on, even as I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't about to turn the car on to go anywhere. but I would still put my seatbelt on because that's how I trained like that. I trained the habits like that. It's a little bit from my exposure to these ROTC guys in college that you can actually be like that and train yourself like that, where the higher levels of training, they actually look a little bit silly. Like, okay, like, so I'm here by the sidewalk, right? So it's like, okay, so I'm gonna pretend this is lava, but I'm not gonna actually touch my foot in the ground. I'm gonna go down like that, but not touch my foot in the ground because I don't wanna touch the lava. That's actually a high degree of training right there, because it would seem silly like that, but you're training the coordination and the discipline and the patience like that. And so some high level training, it really does seem silly, but it's not silly for the outcome. But I'd be like that around driving. But then but all I could do was go to work. I'd go to work. No, I'd wake up, commute to work an hour, work until the late hours of the morning, the early morning. Clean the driving was hard enough because I was like preparing food that whole time. But then also when the day was over, you had to break down the line in the kitchen and do the dishes, and you only had an hour to get in and out of there. So it would be really thick, really thick work, and so you don't have energy to do nothing after that. So that's the way it was with this guy in college, that he worked like a dog like that on that football team, and then he didn't have energy to do nothing after that except play video games to take the smoke off, to take the heat off. But the video games and the football, it compromised his academics, where I think he was a junior when I met him in the dorms. But he actually left college that year because he was it was just too, he was floundering academically because of the rigor of that structure in that program and the demands. So all I meant to say is that's an example of how in some of these sports, now that's college football, in some of these sports they're actually they're not in parity with the students. Whatever accommodations and maybe like perks that would come with that, it's not equivalent to what they're giving them. So from that standpoint, it's pimping, but it's just their energy and their labor, but also their time. You don't appreciate how valuable your time is. It is almost about as valuable as your body, because whatever you do to take care of your body is from what time you have. So I wanted to parlay that into like the martial arts fighting stuff, and that it's similar pimping like that, because they're breaking down their bodies for entertainment. And so now you're starting to see that you're starting to see the aftermath of that, because for a lot of them, that's a newer sport, generally speaking. I think it's been out since the 90s, since I've been getting into trouble. That's about how long not that kind of trouble. I haven't been up in that kind of trouble. I can't claim that one. But since I've been a knucklehead and just like a immature person, juvenile, since about the time the UFC came out like that. I don't mean to cite the UFC specifically. That's not the only venue like that. And I'm not exactly casting aspersions about that particular venue, because that's like a proprietary company. I can't take shots at that. But just to say that sports are taking advantage of people just like any other form of pimping as the entire society. But now your heroes now are starting to break down. So some of these like, for another one, my favorite one of my favorite martial artists was these two brothers, the Diaz brothers. They actually reminded me of my own brother myself. If you've ever had a brother that you're close to, a lot of other brothers will exactly remind you of your brother like that, the dynamic. So they grew up fighting like since they're in high school, and they were about that life. But Nate Diaz, and I don't mean to just be calling people out, but some people have made references that he may have experienced some CTE. And I would imagine that just because of how hard he trains, because more of your CTE stuff is from the light training stuff, like the sparring and jabbing and stuff like that. But if you see some of his mannerisms and his pausing and his stammering, you can tell that he's been affected. He may have been affected like that. But then also, you have different football players too. They come out talking about how these different sports have taken a toll on them in their mind. But then I saw, and this is just talking about violence, is that I saw a picture of Ben Askren. If anyone knows, if you've ever seen that viral video of someone that got instantly knocked out with a flying knee, that viral knockout, like I think that was 2019. I had actually been watching. I used to follow the fighting like that because I like the interviews more so than the actual fighting. I like the mindset and the training, the approach to training. I actually adapt some of that training to that mindset to when I train different things like instruments. You can adapt. Training will apply to a training method that's effective will apply to almost any other discipline or field of interest. So I would be about that. And then so back then, like summer of 2019, before the pandemic, obviously, the UFC was popular. It had always been popular, but it was just about to experience like a surge of popularity. That flying knee that Ben Askren took like that I would say that changed the sport, because that was that gave some of the virility and star power they were looking for. And that's actually kind of a really deep story, because the person that did that, and I don't mean to just be calling people out for the sake of it, but I think Jorge Masvidal is the one that his opponent, and he was that was his real life. That was actually some of the culmination of his success, because if you look at the backstory of that, Jorge Masvidal had appeared on the Joe Rogan show, and he was talking about that fight coming up that summer. But when you see him in that interview, he's on a way different wavelength than a normal person, like a normal fighter, because one is that he was already a seasoned fighter. He had a retreat on a reality television show to South America, where he really got into his roots. He connected with himself. He was stripped of distractions, digital entertainment, stuff like that, and he really connected with himself. And he had like a christening of his career, a culmination of his career, and like some real success, like on broader than the ring that came after that. But if you look at that interview of him on the Joe Rogan show, you could tell he was on one. He was really on one. If someone was about to get knocked out, and that's what comes with the game, that's what they signed up for. But if someone was about to really take one for the team, it would have been Ben Askren. If you could appreciate the way Jorge Masvidal was sounding in that interview, and then also some of the training that he had around him, the trainers, like he had these Cuban trainers that were cold with it. They weren't about the fanfare stuff. They were about the business, the nitty gritty. And Jorge Masvidal was the type of person to really take that training serious into heart like that. But I didn't know at the time of that summer. I didn't know that backstory. I watched that Joe Rogan show later. But I remember watching the interview, like the embedded stuff with Ben Askren. I had never heard of either one of them, Ben Askren or Jorge Masvidal, but they both stood out because their trash talking was kind of unique at that time. Like Ben Askren, he sounded like a little bit arrogant, but also like he trusted himself. And so when I saw him, I didn't know he was gonna take one like that, but he did sound like a little bit like yeah, this other guy doesn't know what he's getting into with me, stuff like that. But then when you saw Jorge Masvidal, he was just on a whole nother wavelength like that. And so all I meant to say is that I saw and so I'm not gonna lie, like I thought that was cool. Like what Jorge Masvidal did, I thought was cool. And I also thought Jorge Masvidal is cool because one thing I like about Jorge Masvidal is in that same Joe Rogan interview, he was talking about standing up for yourself. One is that he said that I think he had said that Ben Askren guy was like mocking him, like he was doing some stuff that was distasteful, especially since it just got distasteful with the trash talking. But I liked in that interview Jorge Masvidal was talking about not going, like if you have a problem, to not be in the habit of expecting like the powers that be to step up for you, because then you're gonna still face that problem if you didn't address it yourself, like the best with what if you didn't address it like a man and you had someone address it for you, it's likely not going to go away like that. And I think he was correct like that. That got me thinking different when I saw him do that, talk like that. But all I meant to say is that I was impressed by the virility of that moment. And it's like, if you think about it, if you're a fan of like fighting, it is like a little bit of satisfaction to like you watch this dangerous sport, and like every once in a while, damn, someone really got messed up. Like, oh, did you see that? It makes it a little bit realer, but there's like a little bit of a dark satisfaction that we all get with stuff like that. I think if we're being honest, that's what the nature of that sport is, and also the fandom of that sport and the participants of that sport. And I'm not saying that Ben Askren would have done exactly the same thing to Jorge Masvidal if he could have got away with it, but he was more of a wrestler. He was a great wrestler, but he was somewhat new to the sport of mixed martial arts,
with respect to Jorge Masvidal, because Jorge Masvidal, that wasn't his first rodeo as a fighter, not necessarily just a wrestler, but a fighter. But that Askren was more of a wrestler. But all I meant to say is that I saw a picture of so I was on the bandwagon and I thought that was cool. Yeah, he knocked him out, stuff like that. Like, damn, he really knocked him out. Can he come back from that? But he seems like he's coming back from it. But then I saw a picture of him like in the hospital, you know. And sometimes they say the highest thing, the greatest thing is when you can see another person as yourself. That is when you can see the great of great in another person, and for that person in you, that person's experience is you, that person's life is you. So I recently came out of the hospital, and I came out of the hospital off of a motorcycle injury, and it was a superficial injury to my foot. It was a heat blister from the engine, and it got really hot, and it made the whole side of my foot fat. But when it popped, it was gushing out like almost like blood, but it was like ooze. But that was like I was like walking in California, and like it looks like I'm bleeding out my foot. I'm in California, and then I go up to like this lady. I'm like, can you help? Like, you would have damn near thought somebody had got like shot or stabbed to be leaking out fluid like that. But they were like, no police here. I can't call the police. They're like, no police. No, they can't do police. And it's like, damn, if that would have been like something serious, that would have been messed up. Like so that's a different history, man. They don't mess with the police around there. But then at the same time as she said that, I had asked another girl if she could call the police. I'm gonna call an ambulance, but she didn't have a phone, so she went up the block to talk to some people. And then like this dude comes up to me like you could tell he runs the block. Like I'm not about that life, but I know that if I was in that area there, if I had something to do in that area, that person was gonna have like he walked like he ran that place, but not just to run it as like to punk people out and extort people, but like if something goes down in that person's community, they're gonna have something to say about it, because that's their community. I think that's actually the deeper thing of what about what even stuff like gangs is like. We kind of bastardize it and we modernize it. I think we gangsterize gangs, where some of the gangster stuff that might be just American society, the different ways of making money when a lot of stuff is just dried up and a lot of the market is cornered. So you got to do this and that. You know, what is ethics when you got a family to feed? But the older iteration is that men are supposed to run their own communities. That's a natural part of nature. Men run their communities. And I don't think that's a bad thing in itself, because this man, he came walking across the street, like he walked across the street like as if we had a problem. He's like, hey man, something wrong with your foot? And then I looked at it, he's like, okay, what you got? He's like, he said, how did he say it? He was like, he said like, did he say ulcer? No, he said, he said what you have there is a cyst. You don't need the ambulance. You need to go to a clinic. You got a cyst there. Get to a clinic. So he was just calling the shot right there. He was saying that he was running his block. Someone got hurt, so he went and checked it out like that. He didn't know me. I wasn't from there. I wasn't representing nothing, but he was just seeing to it that things were taken care of there. And I think that's actually manly, like what he did like that. But so I was getting into the hospital like that, and my foot looked crazy like that. But it's serious with your foot healing, because that's your foot right there. And so I was getting used to, in the hospital, I was getting used to the sight of carnage. Something happens to your mind where, like, most people, you'd be queasy or you'd be intimidated by seeing carnage on your own body. But if you can actually see your body go through some carnage, but then you're graced enough to heal from it, to see your body heal, it's really humbling. Anytime that you see your body really go through healing, like you had an injury that made you concerned, like you didn't know if you were gonna have your full self back after that injury, your full health, and you actually come through the carnage, the fear, but also the healing process, that's really profound. But that experience in the hospital, it got me used to like what it means to see carnage, to see my own body maimed. That was relatively speaking, that wasn't what other people have experienced. But it gave a different perspective to see myself like that in the hospital. And then so when I see these pictures, they're showing this Ben Askren, and he's I think that he had something to do with his lung, where he had an infection in his lung and it compromised his lung. But if you look at that viral knockout, you don't appreciate how heavy that could be if you got knocked out in front of the world like that. Because the thing about sports, Shahrazar Ali said something in one of her books from the 90s, is that a lot of sports is exactly about embarrassing people. That's the purpose of sports, going way back, is that it's to embarrass people. Like if you look at like even like basketball, right? So like when I was a kid, like like a lot of people would they would like do these crazy moves, like the people that didn't really play basketball, like they weren't about to make it up on no team. They weren't out there practicing like that, but they would play a lot. But they weren't about that life like that. They'll always do like some crazy moves and stuff like that, and it might look cool sometimes. It might be slick sometimes, but it's not something that you could like go head up and like win a game. Like, and some of the coolness about a game is like when it's evenly matched. So you wouldn't want a tennis match where they just do something crazy and then it's over like that, or maybe you would, but like when it's back and forth like that, that's actually cooler. So like. That's how sometimes you can tell like the rookies from the pros, is that the rookies would be like, or the amateurs would be like all about the flashy stuff, but the pros, they'd be all about the playing, and then they might just do a flashy stuff like a little bit on top, but it's like more tasteful, I think. But I might be just sounding like, I might sound like asinine saying like that, and like elitist or chauvinist like that. But all I meant to say is that but a lot of sports is about embarrassing people. So like when people play basketball crazy like that, like trying to like break somebody's ankles or dunk in someone's face, when it's not like a dunk is like a real dunk is like it adds emotion to a game, but it's more kind of beautiful and tasteful when it's in the back and flow of a game. But if you just go there and simply dunk on someone, I mean, that's cool too, because like, damn. But it's not the same thing as like when a dunk is like you're playing a game, this and that, and oh snap, there's an interception, and then they're going, so they're on a breakaway, like what are they about to do like that? And then now somebody throws a lob, and it's like it's so nice, it's so poetic like that, you know. It's a sweet science. They say boxing is sweet science, but I think that throwing lobs, alley-oops, that might be a sweet science too. And it's not an easy thing to do, like to throw those lobs like that. That's not nowhere as easy as it looks like. Or to dunk like that, but that's like that's more organic, like in the game, like on a breakaway. But if you just walk up there just trying to dunk on someone's face like that, that's like that actually, I think that might have changed a little bit of basketball, because I remember like in the early 2000s you would have like some of these real dunk artists, and it was like when we were jockeying there, but some of the dunk artists, they weren't the winningest players. But like basketball, it became more about the highlight virility stuff. That's probably like when virility stuff was starting, and that was almost like a value in itself, different than the game. But that might have actually changed the way that people approach the game, and therefore the game. But still, a lot of, according to Shahrazar Ali, a lot of sports is exactly about embarrassing people. So you can imagine if you got embarrassed like that, knocked out cold in front of the world, that's heavy, because everyone looks at you like you got knocked out like that. You look at yourself like that. And you know, sometimes a lot of things, it's not causation but correlation, and you can tell that, you know, Ben Askren, he had a hard time of it since that time. There's nothing easy about getting knocked out like that. And you could also say that he may have never actually like you're not after any experience, you're not the same as you were before the experience. I'm not the same person today as I was at the beginning of the day, and stuff like that, based on what you eat, saw, did, thought, stuff like that. But you get knocked out in front of the world stage like that, you actually lose consciousness, coherence like that. That's really deep, because if you actually did completely cease consciousness, you couldn't exist like that. You couldn't sustain your cardiac rhythm, your breathing, stuff like that. You'd be gone if you were really completely comatose, unconscious. And he was near about there, if not there. So it's incredible what he went through. But then also, you imagine coming back to after getting knocked out like that, and you find out what happened to you, and the whole world knew it, with maybe your altered state of mind for experiencing something that heavy of a blow. So it's heavy stuff that Ben Askren went through. And sometimes you forget that for there to be a winner, there must be a loser. For there to be a superstar, for there to be like a viral moment, a great sport, somebody has to lose for that. And that's exactly the name of the game that makes it like appealing, like the fighting stuff like that. I don't gotta explain that, but a lot of life is like that too. It's zero sum. So in order to have a victory, you must have a loser. But it's still heavy, and we're still human beings, and we're still connected. So when I saw Ben Askren in these hospital pictures where he's lost a lot of his health, because I think he's at least lost one lung from what I saw, and so he will have to have a lung transplant just to stay alive. But even if he stays alive, he'll have to take these anti-immune system suppressants, so he'll never have his full vigor of health, where you don't have to think about health like that. he likely won't have that. I saw my father experience that when he had a organ failure, where he can still live, he's still viable, but he has to work for each day, like taking medicine. But that's actually heavier what my dad has going on, because he has to be on a machine all night. But Ben Askren, it may not be like that, but it's heavy what he went through. But you could say that viral moment that we all saw, it didn't necessarily cause that, but it's still correlated to where he's at right now, and it's heavy. And if you look at him like that, I look at his arm sometimes, and it's like, that's a human arm. That's my arm. That's someone that's taken a loss. That's someone that's been humbled, but also they were humbled like in the line of, because you don't know why people fight. He had a family. He was probably fighting to put food on the table for his family, for glory too, because we're men. We want glory. We want esteem. We want to look cool in the eyes of other people, men and women, whether we're married or not. We want all that. But sometimes it doesn't go our way, and it could have went the same way for Jorge Masvidal, because things could have easily went the other way. That's what a fight is. It's there's no holds barred, and there's no telling where it's going to go. So that's what they stepped into. But all I meant to say is that I take something of solidarity and compassion with Ben Askren, and just actually like the what it means to lose things, because I've worked really hard. I've had a lot of successes, but I've also had a lot of losses. Sometimes back to back, just based on footing, maybe my own decisions too, but a lot of footing too. And so I just want to say that I take solidarity with what it means to lose, to have loved and lost, but also lost, and that lost maybe more than love. But I'm not saying that he didn't love or he's not loved or he doesn't have love, but just that get more of the losing end, like sometimes it might feel like that. So I just wanted to say like solidarity for that, because I was part of the bandwagon. You don't know what that's like. Like everybody looks at you like you got knocked out, right? You got knocked out in front of everybody. But what about that little person, the one person that might have been nice in life, that a lot of people know as a nice guy, but he also thought that it was cool that you got knocked out like that? That's heavy stuff like that. But all I meant to say is that I take solidarity with what it means to lose, loss. Missing out on things like that, just what it looks like if you look at a picture of Ben Askren. If you look at Ben Askren, a lot of his life has been defeated. You could say that a lot of him, even his health, you could extrapolate, has been defeated. Yet, when you look at his eyes, he has not been defeated, because he chose not to be defeated. It's still a choice. Defeat can happen to you, but it's still your choice if you're defeated, how much you're defeated and how long you stay defeated, because even if you chose defeat, you can still rise above that. So I just want to say solidarity to him for rising above that. Well, solidarity to him and Jorge Masvidal for both being warriors and giving us and putting their health and life on the line. And also their sacrifice of what it means to be a martial artist, so that we can be entertained, but more so be inspired. Because I remember at the Jorge Masvidal's retirement ceremony, I think he was like in Florida, he lost to Gilbert Burns, I think, one of his last fights, and he was saying that take my struggle, this career that I've had in front of all y'all, and use it to be inspired for whatever it is that you do. So I was greatly inspired by Jorge Masvidal, his story of first of all his fighting background, his pedigree, but also his story of redemption in the forest, his comeback, and then his stance about standing up to bullies and standing up to self-defense, and then also his admonishment to take inspiration from him for whatever that would lead us in our own respective purposes. And then, but also Ben Askren on the same level of that, just for stepping in the ring with a man like Jorge Masvidal, because it takes a certain amount of heart. It doesn't matter what kind of track record you got, just to get up in the ring with someone like that he had to know what kind of person Jorge Masvidal was, formidable as the ring goes. So he stepped up to that, but he also lost big time. And I've lost big time in my life. But I think that I just meant to say that I think that life is giving me something of sannyas, and I don't like to put life in a box. And like I've lived a somewhat, you could say, pious life, like just because I've thought about a lot of things, like, and I've had a certain tact and abstinence and abstinence from substance and a lot of lifestyles as an adult, and I've been kind to people and I've helped people, and I've been like chaste of speech by and large, but I never wanted to identify as a saint or fancy myself as a religious person or be public about religion, because I think that there's something to be said for light and dark and enjoying things that could be difficult to square away with the religious life, and I still don't want to if you listen to Osho, he had people that would follow him in sannyas, but he was like, he called himself a spiritual playboy, and he believed in enjoying all that life has to offer and not limiting ourselves by any notions of like idealism or like holier than thou or like altruism for the sake of altruism, but just to be authentic. But I think that life may be giving me something of like a sannyas right now. I've been a student for a long time and I still intend to learn, but it almost seems like I somehow stayed in the student phase so long that I didn't exactly go into the householder phase, and I don't know if that's possible, and or the strongest thing for me now is I'm getting on a little bit. This year I'm gonna hit 40 this year, and so I'm not putting nothing off the table. But I just I think that if I'm honest, I think that I may be being afforded some kind of sannyas. So I want to say that I'm gonna start rocking orange a little bit more to signal to life, and also make a video like this, signal to life that I recognize what I'm being put through and I'm stepping up to it. But then also, if I am gonna do that, make a statement like that, I want to stand in solidarity with Ben Askren for getting hurt and choosing not to be defeated, even though he was hurt bad, because I'm hurt bad. But I'm choosing not to get defeated like he did. And also, I see him in me. I see humanity in him. I see God in him, and I see myself in him. And I think a lot of us are in him, and he's in us too. So I just want to rock with him for that recovery, and say that and I just wanted to signal. I wanted to signal sannyas to life, but I also stand with Ben Askren when I do that in solidarity. And I enter this for loving, peace, truth, harmony, sexiness, and enlightenment, and joy and suffering, and all the things that make us learn and better, so that we can each one teach one and stuff like that. But I hope this is a value. Peace.